All right, we're going to start in a minute. Don't worry, people will come in. Everyone's always Jewish time. Anna Ackerman is on. Do you know her? Yes. An Ellen? There's an Ellen on and an Anna Ackerman. All right, Chad, we're ready? Okay. Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom. We're going to begin services this morning. Also, Hannah Bailey's Bat Mitzvah. In your blue prayer books, the small blue Sidurim, which can be found either in the pews in front of you or the table behind you. We're going to begin on page 65 with Birchot HaShachar, the blessings over the dawn. Please rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sachvim bina livchei beinu u'bein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani b'tzomaho. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani ben chorihin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokech ivrihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam abisha rumihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam atir asurihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rakart al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asol kol tzokihi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim yitzad gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hazeh Yisrael b'gvuraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam atay Yisrael b'tifaraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ten life koach. You may be seated. We continue silently to the bottom of the page. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamir v'shinai minayim ramei v'pahai. ונהנה היום ובכל יום מלכנו חסד רחמים בעיניך וראינו קראנו ובתמלאנו חסדים טובים ברוך אתה אדוני גומל חסדים טובים לעמו ישראל יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואבותינו שתצילנו היום ובכל יום מהזייפים אני מאדם רע חמל חברה משחתן רע מגפה רע משטן המשלי בין קשה בין בעל קשה בין שוב בין ברית בין שום בין ברית ריבון כל העולמים לא תדרכנו אנחנו מעפילים תנחנו נכון לבניך אשרינו מטלך, כינו מנה עם גר, עלינו מה יפר, שתינו אשרינו שאנחנו שכבים, ערב בוקר ורים פעמיים בכל יום, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, ברוך שם גבוה, מלכותו לעולם ועד, אתה הוא של העולם, אתה בשל העולם, אתה בעולם הזה ואתה לעולם הבא, קדש את שמך מקדש שמך, וקדש את שמך בלבך, שובשך תרים ותקבע קרננו, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש את שמך ברבים, אתה הוא השמיים והארץ. Vayir b'yirchem, b'yirchem, ki tenetchem l'shem etzlei b'chem haaretz b'shechem l'nechem amar Adonai. Page 70. Rabbi Yishmael Amer b'shlosh esrei b'jot etanur Joshua b'kal b'chol Rab Gizar Sheva b'yam k'nu b'cham b'yinrushni ketuvim b'klal frat b'pratu klal. דבר המילים ממנו, דבר המילים מסופו, וכן שני חטובים המחשים זה את זה את שבו הכתוב אשר שחרר מניהם, יהי רצון בפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואבותינו, שתן חלקנו בתורתך, מנעמי תלמידיו של הכהן, אוהב שלום ורודף שלום, אוהב את הבריאות ומורכבן לתורה. Page 71, Kaddish de Rabbanan. All those in mourning observing a yortzeit, please join us. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Ve'alma divrach gerutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael v'agala v'zman kari v'imeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'me'ol maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudashah brechu le'ela b'kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'yimeru amen. Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Tamidehon v'al kol Tamidehon v'al kol man daskim baraita di batra hadin v'di b'chol atar batar Yehei l'chon shlama rabba china v'chista v'rachamin v'chayin arichinu mezonare v'cha ufor kanamin kadam avuhon di v'shmaya v'imeru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim tovim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav huvarachamav yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru amen. Page 72, Shir Shel Yom, the Psalm for Shabbat. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh, Shabu Hamim V'Riv Tamigdash, Mizmor Les Shil Yom HaShabbat, Tov Adonai Lamel Zimchal Yon, Laki Baboch HaChastecha, Mincha Baleilot, Alei Asor Baleilot. Sadik hatama yifrach, keres bavanon yiskeh, shetulim bevet Adonai, b'chatzot Eloheinu yafrichu. Od, Yenuvan b'seva, d'shanim rinanim yu, lihakid kishar Adonai, tzrivo lo avlata bo. Page 81. Mizmor Shir Chanukat habayit l'David. Hafakta bispedila mochali, pitaka sakita azain simcha l'mani zemecha chavo below yudom, Adonai Elohai leolam odeka. Page 82, the mourner's Kaddish, all those in mourning observing a yard site. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach direte v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayed d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'galau v'yizman kari v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba bevorach leolam umeil maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudashah brechu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran b'alma v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. Page 83, rise for Pesuke de Zimra, beginning first with Baruch She'amar. Baruch She'amar v'haya olaham, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshihi, Baruch omer v'oseh, Baruch ozem kayem. Baruch merchem ahal aretz, Baruch merchem ahal brio, Baruch mesham sechotov l'reya, Baruch ha'ala b'kayam l'netzach, Baruch modu matzia, Baruch shemaho, Baruch atah Adonai ha'melech ha'el ha'v'rachaman ha'melech Meshubachim fa'ar b'shon chasidav, v'avadav shirei David avdechan alech Adonai l'hinu v'shuchos mirot, v'gadelcha neshbecha neveskir v'nishchir shimcha m'lechacha m'achenu alahinu yachid chei holamim, melech meshubachim fardei ad shemo ha'gadol, Baruch atah Adonai, melech mehulal batish b'chohot. Page 96. Ashrei yoshrei v'techo jalu chasela. Ashrei ha'am shekachalo. Ashrei ha'am sh'Adonai Elohav. Tehillah l'David. You may be seated. Potech et yodechem u'matzbiel l'chocha ratzon. Tehillat Adonai yidaber pi v'yivarech kol batzar shem kodsho le'olam va'ehed v'anachnu nivarech yam e'etav yad olam. Hallelujah. Ha ha. We continue on page 100. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Kodsho. Middle of the page. Berkiozo. Hallelujah. B'gvurutav. Hallelujah. Karov gudlaho. Hallelujah, b'tzil tzilei shema, hallelujah, b'tzil tzilei tshua, kol shemata hallelujah, hallelujah, kol shemata hallelujah, hallelujah, ha, baruch Adonai, amen, v'amen, baruch Adonai, mitzion shen shalom, hallelujah, baruch Adonai, Elohim, el Yisrael, so v'do, v'ruk shem kivdo, l'olam, yilameh, kol do ha'aretz, amen, v'amen. We rise, top of 101. V'yivarech David, l'nei kol gahal, v'yomer David. והיה בקעת לפניהם ויהיו בטוחים בבשה, ערופים שלחתם מסלו כמוהם במים הזיהים. ויושר אדוני ביום הישראל מים מצרים. וירא ישראל מצרים את שפתם וירא ישראל תהיה גדולה. אשר עשתה מצרים בהם אדוני והיינו בדי ומשה עבדהו. אז ישיר משה בני ישראל. תשיר אדוני. מקדש אדוני כוננו ידך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד כי לאדוני המלוכה משה בגויים לא משום בהר ציון לשפוט את הר עשיו והייתה לאדוני המלוכה והיידן המלך על כל הארץ ויאמר אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. You may be seated. We continue at the top of page 104. Nishmat kol chai. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. What's that? Yeah, yeah. נהלך לנו שבח לנו וברכה ונברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל חרבי את שם קודשו האל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך הגיבור לנצח והנער מנותך המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. We're going to pause for a moment in the middle of page 105 as I'm going to invite Hannah up along with her parents, Jen and Dr. Sean Bailey, to come up to the bima and present her with her very first talit, her bat mitzvah talit. So why don't you guys come on up to the bima? Chazan. All right. So why don't you each take an end? And it's also here. Okay. So, you ready, Hannah? Nice and loud.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahi'atef b'tzitzi.
Beautiful. Very nice. We place it over her shoulders. It's up and it's good. Just like we say in football. Beautiful. Yeah. And I also just want to say, on a professional note, the mitzvah, the origins of the mitzvah for wearing a talit, or certainly having the tzitziot, the fringes, the ritual fringes on each corner to remind you of your connection to God, Torah, and the Jewish people, are found in this week's parsha. Right? It's the third paragraph of the Shema, and it's found at the closing of this week's Torah portion. So quite fitting. So that's the first of many blessings they recite this morning. You're off to a great start. So I'm going to ask you to take a seat on the other side of the sanctuary with my friend, Cantor Yossi Caravani, and we'll hear from you some more in just a moment, and your parents can be seated. But like I said, you're off to a great start, batting 1,000. And as we segue into the shacharit, or the morning service, again, everyone who's coming in, I invite you to take a siddur, a blue prayer book, found in the tables in the back. And we continue in the middle of page 105 with Shochein Ad. Shochein Ad Maharom V'Kadosh Shemaho. Kituv Machalot, Ruvo. And we rise, top of 106.
Nase, vi hadar, vi ale, vi halal, shmei tekedusha berichu, le'ela mikol birchata, beshirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, ta'amiram be'alma, v'meru amen.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai Vorach Olam Bayet. Baruch Ata Adonai Mecholam Yitzoro LeBorach Hoshech Oseh Shalom Uvoreh Et HaKol.
You may be seated, middle of page 107.
You can practice. אין כרכך אדוני בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי עולם הבא. אפס ביתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו. מתגאר חיות הקודש, נדר בכבוד על המרכבה, חוט ומשול לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדעת, בבינה ובשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות מושלים בקרב תבל. מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נעזיבם בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם. פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמות, צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו, קר על השמש ויזרחו, ועיתקין צורת הלבנה. שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש, ואל אשר שבת מכל המעשים. תתברך משה נשום מעשה ידיך, ואמור שעשית יפרוך הסלע. תתברך צורנו, מלכנו וגואלנו בורא קדושים. ומעריצין ומעריפרים ומעקדשים וממליכין וממליכין את שם האל המלך הגדול והגיבור מאור הקדוש הוא. להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח, בספר ולאבינים הקדושה, כולם כאחד. עונים אומרים בירה, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. ואופנים וחיות הקודש ברך לא מוצאים למען צרפים לעומתם, משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך נמות איתנו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מרעלו ברוך אתה אדוני, יוצר המאורות, עבר אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו. וקרבתנו שכמה הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך ולהתך להבא את שמך, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'elech asher nechi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha beveitecha uvleftecha v'derech uv'shoflecha uv'kumecha uv'shartam leo al yadecha v'hayu letotafo b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
והם שמע תשמעו מצוותיו שנצווה אתכם היום. למען ירבו ממכם מלכם האדמה שנשבע אדוני לאבותיכם לתת להם כי מהשמיים על הארץ. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם מדורותם ונתנו הציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וריתם אותו זכרתם את קומץ אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם אחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחרי למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים אלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמר. תודה למצינו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו אתה ומעולם. תהילות לנו ברוך וברך משה בני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל עובדכם עמך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
We rise for the Amidah, the standing portion of the service, page 115b.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי נחם אלוהי האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל זוכר חסדי אבות מביא גואל לבני בניהן משהו בעבר המלך חוזר ומשה המגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד אתה על מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים צומח נופלים וחולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לישנה. מי כמוך לצביהריו, ומי דומה, מלך ממית ומחייב, ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקור רעש גדול דיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסין ומצרפין ומתם, ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בקרוב בימינו, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדע ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה, ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר אמור, כדבר אמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. One to go.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור נגיד גוד.
לדור ודור, לדור ודור,
דור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. שבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לא ימוש לעולם ועד.
לדור ודור, לדור ודור,
דור ודור נגיד גודלך.
לדור ודור, לדור ודור,
דור ודור נגיד גודלך, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, גדול וקדוש אתה, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, גדול וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Continue down south in Hebrew and English from page 117 through page 120.
Put your head up.
If you're still davening the Amidah, please don't interrupt. We continue page 138 with Kaddish Shalem.
no.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמר הבא.
Amen.
ועל מה דברה קהילותיהם וכותב חייכון ומכל מחד לכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו
Amen.
השמרה במבורא עולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך ושתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתודה ויתעלה ויתעלה שמדי קודשה
Rechu.
לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה ואמרו
Amen.
יתקבץ לוטון ובוטון וכל ישראל קדם עוון דשמע ואמרו
Amen.
יש למה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ואמרו
Amen.
עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן יעשה שלום
Hey.
יעשה שלום
Hey.
שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל one more time יעשה שלום
Hey.
יעשה שלום
Hey.
שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
And we continue page 139, Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for opening up and taking out, and subsequently reading from the Torah scroll, page 139.
Take your water, be careful there. Those people going to stay here.
אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני יעוז לעמו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום אהבה רחמים ותיבא ברצונך את ציון תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו מלך רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. מסוהרו ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני ויפוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך.
We continue with the Aramaic passage from the Zohar, middle of 139, until the sixth line from the top of page 140.
Hey, be'anarachetz v'lishme kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana emar tushbechan, be'anarachetz, be'anarachetz, v'lishme kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana emar tushbechan, yeherava kodama, תפתח ליבי באורייתא, תשלים משאלים לליבי, ליבו וכל עמך ישראל, אתהבו חיים ולשלם, אמן.
So the Sefer Torah is taken from the Ark, and it is passed from the Mashal and Bailey families, as we say in Hebrew, Lador Vador, from generation to generation. From parents to children to grandchildren.
דור ודור לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נהקדיש. שבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, וקדוש אתה. כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, וקדוש אתה. Come to me, please. Everyone facing to the congregation, big line, facing up, please. Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh. Let me turn around, spin around, and we bow together, please, facing to the ark. גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. Follow me, please. אדוני, הגדולה, הגבורה, מורשה קהילת יעקב, תורה ציווה לנו משה. מורשה קהילת יעקב, מורשה קהילת יעקב, מורשה קהילת יעקב, תורה ציווה לנו משה.
You may be seated. The Torah reading for this Shabbat morning, this hot, hazy, humid day, is Parshat Shalach Lecha, and it can be found in your large red books. We're switching books now, so these are the Chumashim. The large red books, they can be found, if they're not in the pews in front of you, they can be found in the table in the back. And the Torah reading begins in our edition, page 845. Page 845, chapter 14, beginning verse 8 in the Hebrew or the English. Again, page 845, chapter 14, verse 8 in the Hebrew or in the English.
Where are you? You need to answer me. My God, reading it scared me.
Again, this is the book of Numbers, page 845, verse 8 in the Hebrew or the English, and taking the first Aliyah, our Hannah's paternal grandparents.
Baruch et Adonai Hamorah.
Baruch Adonai Morach L'olam Va'ed.
Baruch
Adonai Hamorach L'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech olam, asher bocher banu mikol ha'anim, v'natan lanu et tzarato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
אמן. אם חפץ בנו אדוני והביא אותנו אל הארץ הזאת ונתנה לנו ארץ אשר היא זבת חלב ודבש, אך באדוני אל תמרודו ואתם אל תראו את עם הארץ, כי לחמנו הם שר צילה מעליהם, ואדוני איתנו. אל תראו, ויאמרו כל העדה לרגום אותם באבנים, וכבוד אדוני נראה בו אל מועד אל כל בני ישראל. ברוך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emes V'Chaye Olam Natan B'Sokenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Thank you very much. Go back to your seat now.
And for the second Aliyah, we continue page 846, chapter 14, verse 11. Taking this Aliyah are Hannah's maternal grandparents, Josh and Gilda Mashal.
Have the blessing, please. Baruch.
ברכו את אדוני מבורך,
Baruch Adonai Morach Olam Ba'ed.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קרבנו מכל העמים ותן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן תורה.
Amen. Hold the Torah here. ויאמר אדוני אל משה, עדני נצוני העם הזה, ועד אנה לא יאמינו בי בכל האותות אשר עשיתי בקרבו. הכנו בדבר והורישנו, ועשה אותך לגוי גדול עצום ממנו. ויאמר משה אל אדוני, ושמעו מצרים, כי העלית בכוחך את העם הזה מקרבו. ואמרו אל יושב הארץ הזאת, שמעו כי אתה אדוני בקרב העם הזה, אשר עין בעין יראה אותה אדוני. ועננך עומד עליהם, ובעמוד ענן אתה הולך לפניהם יומם ולילה, ועמוד אש לילה, והמתה את העם הזה כאיש אחד. ואמרו הגויים אשר שמעו אל שמך לאמור, מבלתי יכולת אדוני להביא את העם הזה אל הארץ, אשר נשבע להם וישחטם במדבר. ועתה יגדל נא כוח אדוני כאשר דיברת לאמור, אדוני ערך אפיים ורב חסד, נושא עוון ופשע ונקה לא ינקה, פוקד עוון אבות על בנים, על שלישים ועל רבעים. סלח נא לעוון העם הזה כגודל חסדך, וכאשר נסעת לעם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה. ויאמר אדוני, סלחתי כדבריך.
Touching kiss the Torah here. If you tell it. Yes. For the blessing.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת בחיי עולם לצדקנו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
You can stay here, please.
If one of the last verses sounded familiar, it's because we recite it on all the holidays, and it's actually read again. It was read earlier, scene of the golden calf that took place atop Mount Sinai. It's known as the 13 divine attributes of God, when Moses tries to talk God out of destroying the Israelite nation. And he's successful in this case. God decides to only destroy the 10 spies who gave negative reports. The charting continues, page 847, chapter 14, verse 21, in the Hebrew or the English. And taking this 30 aliyah for us as one of the stalwarts of our community. We're glad to have him back. Ned Schlanger.
Baruch Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Morach Olam Ba'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Li'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher baruch abonu mikol ha'amim. V'nosan lanu es torato. Baruch Atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
אמן. ואולי חי אני וימלא כבוד אדוני את כל הארץ, כי כל האנשים הרואים את כבודי ואת אותותי אשר עשיתי במצרים ובמדבר וינשאו אותי. זה 10 פעמים ולא שמעו בקולי, וימירו את הארץ אשר נשבעתי לאבותם, וכל מנעצי לא יראוה. ואבדיך לב עקב הייתה רוח אחרת עמו, וימלא אחרי והביא אותי אל הארץ אשר בא שמה וזרעו יורישנה. והעמלקי והכנעני יושב בעמק, מחר פנו וסעו לכם המדבר דרך ים סוף.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher nasan lanu toras emes, v'chaye olam notah b'sofenu, Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen.
Good job, buddy. You can go back to the seat. You have to stay there. What are you going to do? You know, it's a punishment. How would you work it? Good. Take a corner. Tali, touching kissing. Say the blessing.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamorach.
ברוך אדוני המורך לעולם ועד.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן. וידבר אדוני אל משה ואל אהרון לאמור, עד מתי לעדה הרעה הזאת אשר הם ממלינים עלי, את תלונות בני ישראל אשר הם ממלינים עלי, שמעתי, אמור עליהם, חי אני נאום אדוני, אם לא כאשר דיברתם באוזני, כן אעשה לכם במדבר הזה, יפלו פגריכם בכל פקודיכם לכל מספרכם, מבין 20 שנה ומעלה, אשר אלינותם עלי, אם אתם תבואו אל הארץ אשר נשאתי את ידי לשכן אתכם בה, כי אם כלב בן יפונה וישוע בן נון, ותהפכם אשר אמרתם לבז יהיה, והביאותי אתם אותם וידעו את הארץ אשר מאסתם בה, ופגריכם אתם אותם יפלו במדבר הזה, ובניכם יהיו רעים במדבר 40 שנה, ונשאו את זנותיכם עד תום פגריכם במדבר, במספר הימים אשר תרתם את הארץ 40 יום לשנה, יום לשנה תישאו את עוונותיכם 40 שנה. וידעתם את תנועותי, אני אדוני דיברתי, אם לא זאת תעשה לכל העדה הרעה הזאת הנועדים עלי במדבר הזה יתמו ושם ימותו, והאנשים אשר שלח משה לתור את הארץ וישובו ואלונו עליו על כל העדה להוציא דיבה על הארץ, וימותו אנשים מוצאי דיבת רעה במגפה לפני אדוני, וישוע בן נון וכלב בן יפונה היו מן האנשים ההם ההולכים לתור את הארץ.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher natan lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
The Torah continues, page 849, verse 39. The Israelites have just received the distressing news that they will be forced to wander in the desert for 40 years until the older generation drops off and the younger generation, 20 and under, are ready to take the promised land.
You can read the first line, please.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamorach.
ברוך אדוני המורך לעולם ועד.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן. וידבר משה את הדברים האלה אל כל בני ישראל, ויתאבלו העם מאוד, וישכימו בבוקר, ויעלו אל ראש ההר לאמור, הננו, ועלינו למקום אשר אמר אדוני, כי חטאנו. ויאמר משה, למה זה אתם עוברים את פי אדוני, והוא לא תצלח, אל תעלוהו, כי אין אדוני בקרבכם, ולא תנקפו לפני אויביכם.
Say the blessing, Baruch.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher natan lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן.
Good job.
ברכו את אדוני המברך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המברך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. כי עמלקי והכנעני שם לפניכם ונפלתם בחרב, כי על כן שבתם מאחורי אדוני, ולא יהיה אדוני עמכם, ויתפלו לעלות על ראש ההר. ואהרון ברית אדוני ומשה אלומש מקרב המחנה. וירד העמלקי והכנעני אשר בהר ההוא, ויקום ויקטום עד החורמה. ודבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, ואמרת עליהם כי תבואו אל ארץ משובותיכם אשר אני נותן לכם, ועשיתם אישה לאדוני עולה או זבח, לפלה נדר או בנדבה או במועדיכם, לעשות ריח ניחוח לאדוני מן הבקר או מן הצאן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי העולם נטע בתוך חיינו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
יעמוד שלום בן משה.
What's your Hebrew name?
Simcha. Then Yeshua and Gilad.
Touch and kiss the Torah here. Touch. Here. Okay. No, not yet. Okay, this. Say the blessing.
ברכו את אדוני המברך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
והקריב המקריב קרבנו לאדוני מנחה, סולת יסרון בלול ברביעי ההין שמן, ויין לנסך רביעי ההין. תעשה על העולה או לזבח לכבש האחד, או לעיל תעשה מנחה, סולת שני עזרונים בלולה בשמן שלישית ההין, והיין לנסך שלישית ההין. תקריב ריח ניחוח לאדוני.
Good job. Touch and kiss the Torah here if you've done it. Not you. Okay. Say the blessing.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Please rise.
Good job. Second. Do חצי קדיש.
יגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ועולמי עולמיה. יברא ויפרע וירומם ויתנשא ויהדר ויהלל ויהלל שמי תקרושע ברכו לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירה מעלמה ואמרו אמן.
I'm going to recite
Next step.
Amisha Berach, a prayer of
not leaving
well-being
yet.
for the brave men and women serving on our behalf, and both,
Next step,
I'm sorry,
you are.
for all those in our community
Say the
who are
blessing.
sick or ailing. It doesn't matter if the person's Jewish or not, but that way we can pray for their speedy and their hopeful recovery. You could come forward, I'll pause briefly in the Hebrew, and you could whisper the name to me in the Hebrew or the English or the Yiddish or the Farsi, and that way, again, we'll pray for their speedy and hopeful recovery. Mishaberach Habateinu Rahamin Tzchak Yakoster Kachal B'Layahu Yivarech V'Yarpeh Kolchem B'Gilatenu at Elazar ben Rachel, Sarah bat Gila, Gila bat Heshma, Nosrat bat Nozanit, Avram ben Esther, David Mindel ben Chaya. Anybody else? Roy Silver. Seth Mayeri. Gershom ben Batsheva Leib. Anyone else? Okay. V'kocham b'kila hakadosh hakadosh baruch hu meila rachamim alehem al takam ratam mishak refushim and shemaim refuta nefesh refuta guf b'tok sharach Yisrael shabbat mitzvah karavo lavo hashabag al zman kariv and omahar amen. And a special Misha Berach for all the brave men and women serving on our behalf in the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, and the Armed Forces of the United States of America.
If you can just repeat after my sentence, it's very easy to catch. Misha Berach Avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak veYaakov Yevarech et chayalei tzva hagana leYisrael. One more time. Misheberach Avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak veYaakov Yevarech et chayalei צבא הגנה לישראל, העומדים במשמר ארצנו בערנו למגונו ונאמר ביד מצרים, מן הים הגדול עד ברבה ביבשה באוויר ובים, ייתן אדוני תבינה כמנהג לפניהם, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה, מכל נגע ומחלה, ישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם, להילחם לכם ובכם יושיע אתכם, ונאמר Amen.
You may be seated.
תעמוד הבחורה כלת הבת מצווה, חנה לאה בת שלמה משה ושמחה, מפטיר בכבוד.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Morach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
V'hi kriv Hamakriv Karbano Ladonai Mincha Sole Isaron Balul Bervei Hahin Shaman Ve'ayin Lanesech Revi'i Hahin Ta'aseh Al Ha'ola Ola Zavach La Keves Ha'echad Ola Ayil Ta'aseh Mincha Solet Shnei Ezronim Belulav Shemen Shilishi Tahin V'ayin La Nesech Shilishi Tahin Takriv Reach Nechoach La Adonai.
Good job. Say the blessing. Beautiful job. Baruch.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Natan B'choteinu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
At this time, it's my honor to recite a Misha Berach over Hannah Bailey on the occasion of her publicly becoming a bat mitzvah in front of friends and family. So I'll do it first in the Hebrew and then in English. Misha Berach Avatenu HaMitzvah Kos Krechu B'Leyahu Yivarech Et Chana Leah Bat Shlome Moshe V'Simcha Shagil mitzvot v'ala likvod hamakom likvod haTorah likvod haShabbat. Kodesh Baruch Hu yishmerei chayeha v'yichonen liba liot shlema im Adonai Eloheha lago b'Torah le'echad b'dracha v'nishmor mitzvotav v'shlach bracha v'tzalcha b'chol masay yadeha yirtzon shekor aleha legadlah l'Torah u'chupa u'masim tovim v'timsachem b'sechel tov b'enei Elohim v'adam b'no mahar. Amen. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless Hannah Bailey, who's been called to the Torah upon reaching the age of mitzvot with reverence for God, the Torah, and Shabbat. May the Holy One protect and sustain her, helping her to be wholehearted in her faith, to study Torah and to fill mitzvot, and to walk in God's ways. May her parents rear her to maturity, guiding her to a love of Torah, of Jewish learning, to the chuppah. Do you know what that is?
Not yet.
It's the marriage canopy. All right, first we have your brother and sister's bat mitzvah, right? And to a life of good deeds. May Hannah find favor before God and all the community, and let us all say, Amen. Please rise as the Sefer Torah is lifted. Bezot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Lifnei Bnei Yisrael Api Adonai.
Come sit down here. Sitting here with the top. Sit here. Don't worry, nothing will be fun. It's very light. Okay, your job to hold the Torah now. Roll it. Tight.
You may be seated. The Haftarah for this Shabbat morning, it's a special one, not just because it's Hannah's bat mitzvah, though that's a special reason too. Unfortunately, as you know, because of COVID, the date had to be rescheduled a few times. So the Haftarah that she's going to do is actually from a few weeks earlier. It's from Bechukotai. So if you'd like to follow along in your Chumash, the introduction is 762, page 762. And the Hebrew and English text in the following pages from Jeremiah chapter 16, just so that a few verses from this week's Haftarah are read. The Cantor Karbani is going to start after the blessings and just do the first three verses from what would be this week's Haftarah Shlach. But then Hannah is going to take over, and she's going to prepare the Haftarah that she originally learned. Most important, though, we're just happy to have her here this morning, that we're able to make this possible, family and friends able to come together in relative safety, security, and of course, health. So again, I give you our mafteret for this Shabbat morning, our Bachora Bat Mitzvah, our Bat Mitzvah girl, Hannah Bailey.
רגע, הבאתי את זה נכון. דור. 857. מחר בחוקותיו. Right? Yeah.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar B'Nevi'im Tovim V'Ratza B'Divreihem הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק.
וישלח ישוע בן נון מן השיטים 2 אנשים מרגלים חרש לאמור לכו ראו את הארץ ואת יריחו וילכו ויבואו בית אישה זונה ושמה רחב וישכבו שמה ויאמר למלך יריחו לאמור הנה אנשים באו הנה הלילה מבני ישראל לחפור את הארץ וישובו 2 אנשים וירדו מההר ויעברו ויבואו אל ישוע בן נון ויספרו לו את כל המוצאות אותם ויאמרו אל ישוע כי נתן אדוני בידינו את כל הארץ וגם נמוגו כל יושבי הארץ מפנינו. 763 now, please.
Adonai Uzi, Uma Uzi, Umanusi, Beyom Sarah Elecha, Goyim Yavo'u, Me Afsei Aretz, Veyomeru, Ach Sheker, Nachalu, Avotenu, Hevel Ve'em Bam Mo'il, Haya Aselo Adam, Elohim, Vehema lo Elohim, Lachain, Hineni, Modiam, Bapam, Hazo, Odiem et Yadi, Ve'et Gevurati, Ve'yadu Kishemi Adonai, Chata Yehuda, Ketuva, Be'etz Barzel, Betziporen, Shamir, Harusha, Al Luach Libam, Ulkarnot Misbechotehem, Kiskor Benehem Misbechotam, Va'asherechem Al Eitz Ra'anan, Al Giva'ot Hagvoho, Harari Basadeh, Helcha Chal Ot Rotecha, Lavaz Etain Bamotecha, Bechatat Bechal Givulecha. V'shemata uvcha menachalatecha asher natati lach v'ha'avaticha et oyevecha ba'aretz asher lo yadata ki eish kerachtem be'api ad olam tuchad. Ko amar Adonai Arur hagever asher yivta ba'adam v'sam basar zero o umin Adonai yasur libo v'haya ke'ar ba'arava v'lo yireh ki yavo chov v'shechan haririm ba'midbar eretz melecha v'lo teshev. Baruch hagever asher yivta b'Adonai v'chaya Adonai mivtaho v'chaya ke'etz shatul al mayim v'al yuval yishala sharashav v'lo yireh ki yavo chom v'chaya elihu ra'anan Uvishna batzoret lo yidag velo yamish me'ezo peri. Akov halev mikol ve'anush hu miyeda'enu. Ani Adonai choker lev bochen kelayo ve'letei le'ish kid rachav kifri ma'alalav. Korei Dagar velo yalad ose osher velo vemishpat bechatzi yamavs yaazvenu uv acharito yiyet naval kisei chavod marom merishom mikol mikdashenu mikveh Yisrael Adonai Kal ozvecha yevoshu yasurai ba'aretz yikatevu ki yazevu mikor mayim chaim et Adonai. Rifa'eni Adonai ve'e Rafei Hosheni ve'iva shecha ki tahilatihi ata.
Good job, beautiful job. Beautiful, go.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sor kol ha'olamim sadik bechol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'medaber umkayim shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'davar echad midevarecha ahor lo yashuv rekam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman ata baruch ata Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
ha'el ha'ne'eman b'chol devarecha.
Amen.
Rachim al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu ve'al yuval nefesh toshia bimhera beyamenu baruch ata Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
mesameach Tzion bevanecha.
Amen.
Samechenu Adonai Eloheinu be'eliyahu hanavi abdecha u'malchut beit David meshichecha bimhera yavo ve'yagel libenu al kisei olo yeshev zar ve'lo yinchalu od acherim et kivodo ki v'shem kochecha nishbata lo shelo yich b'neirot le'olam va'ed baruch ata Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Magen David
Amen.
al haTorah ve'al ha'ovodah ve'al ha'nevi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'lemenucha lechavod u'letifaretz. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach u'mevarechim otah yitbarach shimecha befi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed baruch ata Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
mekadesh hashabbat.
Amen. It's time to throw very gently the candy, please.
You guys.
I think we have some people forget who is the bar mitzvah kids here. Let's be are clapping together. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov. Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov. Yelano, 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 oh. Yelano, Yelano, lechol Israel, David melech Israel, chai v'kayam. David melech Israel, chai v'kayam. Ay, 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 Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov. Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Yelano. Yelano, Yelano, oh lechol Israel. Yelano, Yelano, oh lechol Israel. David melech Israel, chai v'kayam. David melech Israel, chai v'kayam.
In addition to so eloquently chanting from the Torah and the Haftarah and leading us in portions of the service, and deftly dodging those fruit candy projectiles, Hannah has prepared a Devar Torah, some words of Torah about that which she and I have studied together these past few months, mostly over FaceTime, although in the past few weeks meeting in person. And she's going to deliver it for you now while speaking slowly and clearly, and not forgetting to enunciate each and every word, while flashing us that beautiful smile of hers. And Don't be nervous. Do you want this or no? Okay, I give you our Bechora HaBat Mitzvah, our Bat Mitzvah girl this morning, Hannah Bailey.
Shabbat Shalom. In today's Torah portion, we learn the story of how 12 spies were sent into the land of Israel to scout out the countryside and gather intelligence. Each spy represented one of the tribes of Israel, and they were supposed to bring back strategic and tactical information. The Jewish people had escaped Egypt, but now was the time to leave the desert, attack and move into this new land, and establish Israel. Out of all of the 12 scouts, only 2 of them, Caleb and Joshua, report that the land is amazing and that it can be conquered by the Israelites. They see things in a positive light and are confident that the Israelites could easily conquer the land. The other 10 spies state that the land is fruitful and that the Jews would thrive there, but that this land is also full of giant people, strong fortresses, and powerful warriors that could not be defeated. They have a very differing impression. These 10 may be too pessimistic and perhaps too afraid. They see matters in a negative light, that the Jewish people are not strong or powerful enough to take over the land. They urge the Israelites not to attack. Having heard from the majority of these spies that it would be too difficult to conquer the land of Israel, the people go into despair. They protest against Moses and Aaron. They talk about going back to Egypt, where they had just been freed from slavery. God threatens to destroy and abandon the Jews, but Moses convinces God not to do this. Although not killing them, God does make sure that this generation of Jews will not reach the land of Israel, but allows for the next generation, their children, to finally be the ones to move. There are 3 main themes or lessons that I took away from these passages. The first is that, in life, it is sometimes important to push oneself and take some risks in order to achieve great things. God wanted the people to conquer the land of Israel and would not have posed this to them as an option if it would not have won. We all should not see obstacles as something that can't be defeated, but rather see these things as challenges to overcome and as opportunities to do one's best. Another lesson is that change can be hard. Perhaps these 10 spies were just afraid of going into Israel, but they may have been afraid of the change that would then be required to take place. Many of the Israelites were comfortable being in the desert, and now taking over this new land of Israel may be hard. Many of them were likely afraid. None of us should be comfortable in our ways, and we should all try to embrace new change. Change is not easy, but almost always worth it in the end, and it should not be something we fear. In summary, I think this Torah portion demonstrates how important it is to be a positive person and to be around positive people. Caleb and Joshua were positive people, the other spies were not. This is reflected in their oppression of the land and high chances they gave to the Jewish tribes of conquering it. No one wants to be around someone or some group of people that are pessimistic all the time. Maintaining a positive attitude, even in very difficult situations, this is key. Negativity does no one any good. By being positive, one will be inspired to work hard and good things will then follow. During the past year, most of us, if not all of us, faced numerous challenges. We were afraid of the changes taking place around us because of the pandemic. We had to sometimes take risks and just go for things, like taking the vaccines, and most importantly, we had to all stay positive. By doing these things, as a group, we are conquering this pandemic and are now coming out the other side. In conclusion, I would like to finish by thanking all the people who helped me get to this point today. I would also like to thank Rabbi Stanger and Cantor Caravani for their guidance and support. I also could not have done this without the encouragement and patience of all my wonderful Hebrew school teachers throughout the years here at Old Westbury Hebrew Congregation, and Mr. Gross, who was always so helpful to me. Next, I would like to thank my brother Tyler and my sister Blake. I love you both so much. Thank you to my grandparents for being so supportive of me all these years and always being super loving. Thank you to all my family and friends that came to the services this morning, both from near and far, especially those that came from as far away as California and Florida. I want to thank the Old Westbury Hebrew Congregation community. This is such a wonderful place. And last, but certainly not least, I want to thank my mom and dad for being the most loving, supportive, and nurturing parents and being amazing Jewish role models to me. I love you guys so much.
First of all, that was beautiful, and I do want to say that your parents are loving and wonderful people, and you talked about positive people. Having them in our community is so great because that's how they are, both of them. And I know as far as membership and just as far as the events and programs that we do here, they've been wonderful and very supportive, and it's great to have them here. We can't wait till Tyler and Blake's B'nai Mitzvah. And as we said in the blessing, your wedding, God willing, under the chuppah, one day with Cantor Caravani, helping to co-officiate, right? In this community. And it's an honor to work for you, to work with you and to just watch you sort of grow and mature. And I hope we have the opportunity to study together more in the future. We're going to invite somebody in a moment, very important to this community. He's our current chair of the board. He's doing his second go-round in that role, and he's a past president. And again, speaking of positive, he's one of those people that, the Cantor and I can't say enough good things about. You can often judge a person by the company they keep, and the fact that your parents are good friends with him says a lot as well. But I do want to just take a moment because he's going to present you with the gifts. So first off, before that, the Cantor and I would like to bless you with the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly benedictions in Hebrew and English. So if I could ask you to bow your head ever so slightly.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
May the Lord bless you and keep you.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך.
May the Lord God gaze upon you and be gracious to you.
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
May the Lord God shine his countenance upon you and extend to you and your family a lifetime of health, happiness, and most of all, what we need in this world today, peace. And as I mentioned, Steve Yadagari is going to come up and present you with gifts on behalf of our community. But I just want to present you first with two things that I'm going to put in this wonderful gift bag. Do these look familiar?
Yes.
Okay. So there are two of them in here. I'm going to put them in the gift bag, take them home, put them in the freezer, and one day, maybe not too far in the future, you'll find that special someone. And about a week before your wedding, take them out, let them thaw out, and then on your wedding night, each of you will have one. The idea being you're going from one simcha to another, from one joyous celebration in the Jewish community, one major life cycle event to the other. And something else that's not in the gift bag, but there is 50% off next year for Wednesdays with the Rabbi. And I'd love to have the opportunity to continue to learn with you because Jewish learning never, ever, ever ends. And now I'd like to turn things over again to Steve Yadagari.
Hi there. Great. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to Old Westbury Hebrew Congregation. It's really wonderful having so many of you here. It's nice that we're able to actually gather in person again. And maybe one day soon, God willing, we'll be able to take our masks off, too, so we can hope. Big mazel tov, Hannah. You were amazing. You did an amazing job. And I think it's especially noteworthy for, as the rabbi mentioned earlier, this was like the third or fourth time you had to prepare for this event. So, and you really nailed it. I think maybe you deserve 3 to 4 times the gifts because of that fact. And you should talk to your parents about that later. I'm really proud and privileged to be here this morning. You come from a wonderful family. As the rabbi said, your parents have been longtime members of our community, generous supporters, both with their resources, but also, very importantly, with their time. And they are just truly amazing people, fortunate to call them my friends, and a real credit to our community. I had a chance to speak with your dad and mom during the week, and they just shared a few thoughts with me. And I'm not going to upstage anything they might want to say later, but I do want to share a few thoughts. They described you as being well-rounded, good at many things, not atypical for the oldest sibling, terrific big sister, and probably most importantly, a very kind person with a big heart. And there's no way you'll remember this, but probably about 8-9 years ago, you were on a soccer field. I think you were a 5-year-old. My daughter was a 4-year-old, and she was really struggling, having a tough time. And then Hannah just came over, she saw what was going on, gave her like just a little bit of encouragement, and then, my daughter was running around the soccer field. I mean, it's just amazing, and it just showed and gave us an indication of the kind of person you are and the kind of person you've grown to be, and we're very excited to watch you continue to grow and develop and all the wonderful things, God willing, that are ahead for you. So on behalf of our congregation and community, we have some gifts for you here. It includes a Kiddush cup, thank you, a Tanakh, so you can continue your Jewish learning, and there's also a certificate that will commemorate this auspicious occasion signed by the rabbi, the cantor, our president, and also the director of our religious school, Mindy Kremer. So congratulations, Mazel Tov, great job. Okay.
So I'm going to ask, let's take your sermon, let's put it in there too, because I think, look, you're going to accomplish great things, and when you become famous, it's the first official public speech you gave, so the original copy, let's put it in there for safekeeping, right? Yeah, I could say I knew her when. So I'm going to ask you to take this bag of gifts and walk over to your parents, and we're going to say a blessing together, a bracha. Mom and dad and your brother and sister to rise in their seats. And we're going to say the Shehechianu blessing. You guys ready, Family Bailey? If you could repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu, v'kiyamanu, v'higianu, lazman hazeh. Praised are you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who has kept us and sustained us and caused us to arrive at this auspicious occasion and to many more Shehechianu moments together in your future. Amen, Selah. Now I'd like to ask everyone to please rise as we're led in English. Prayer for our country in the middle of page 148.
Prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony to banish hatred and bigotry and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. And a prayer for the modern state of Israel in the English, top of page 149.
A prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu Shebashamayim, rock and redeemer of the people Israel. Bless the state of Israel with its promise of redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them, crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen.
Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael ve'goalo. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael ve'goalo. Barech et Medinat Yisrael, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו, הגן עליה בעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. ושלח אורך, ועמיתך לראשיה, שריה ויועציה ויועציה, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך. אבינו אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. אבינו אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. חזק את ידי מגנרת קודשנו והנחילם אלוהינו ישועה, ועטרת ניצחון תיאטריהם. ונתת שלום בארץ ושמחת עולם ליושביה, ונאמר Amen.
Amen. And on page 150, we have the blessing for the new month, the new Hebrew month. The new Hebrew summer month of Tammuz begins Wednesday at sunset and will be observed through Friday evening.
יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתחדש עלינו את החודש הזה לטובה ולברכה. שתחדש עלינו את החודש הזה לטובה ולברכה. ותיתן לנו חיים ארוכים, חיים של שלום, חיים של טובה, חיים של ברכה, חיים של פרנסה טובה, חיים של חילוץ עצמות, חיים שיש בהם יראת שמיים ויראת חטא, חיים שאין בהם בושה וכלימה, חיים של אושר וכבוד, חיים שתהיה בנו אהבת תורה ויראת שמיים, חיים שימלאו משאלות ליבנו לטובה, אמן סלה. מי שעשה ניסים, מי שעשה ניסים לאבותינו, מי שעשה ניסים, מי שעשה ניסים לאבותינו, יגאל אותם מעבדות לחירות, הוא יגאל אותנו מקרוב, ויקבץ נידחינו מארבע כנפות הארץ. חבר עם כל ישראל, חבר עם כל ישראל, חבר עם כל ישראל, ונאמר ונאמר אמן. ראש חודש תמוז יהיה ביום חמישי ולמחרתו ביום שישי, הבא עלינו ועל כל ישראל לטובה. יחדשהו הקדוש ברוך הוא עלינו ועל כל עמו בית ישראל, על כל עמו בית ישראל, לחיים ולשלום, לששון ולשמחה, לישועה ונחמה, ונאמר ונאמר אמן.
You may be seated. We continue responsibly with the Ashrei Middle of 151, led for us by one of the stalwarts of our community, Nathan Yadagari. Ashrei Ham Shekacha Lo, Ashrei Ham Shadonai Elohav.
תהילה לדוד ארמך אלוהי המלך, וברכה שמך לעולם ועד.
בכל יום וברכך ולא שמך לעולם ועד.
אדוני מהולל מאוד, וגבורתו אין הרף.
דור לדור ישבח מעשיך, וגבורתך יגידו.
עדת כבוד דודיך, ודברי נפלותיך עשיך.
ועזוז נורתך יאמרו, גדולתך ספרנה.
זכר טובך יביאו, ושטחתך ירננו.
Chanu Barachim Adonai, Erech Rapai Mudo Chased,
Adonai lakol, Barahamo balkol, Masa.
Yaduchanai Kol Masecha, V'chasidecha Yibaruchucha,
Kabod malchutecha yamru, Kirotecha yidaberu.
Lo Dilim Ne'adam Gvurtav, V'kvod Hadar Machuto,
Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, Ukshaltecha bechol dorvato.
Samech L'nai L'chol Hanoflim, Zakef L'chol HaKfufim,
הנה כל אורך יסברו, ואתה נותן לכם את אוכלם בעיתו.
Potech Et Yadecha, U'Matzbiah L'chol
צדיק
Haratzon,
אדוני בכל דרכיו, והסית בכל מעשיו.
Karov L'nai L'chol Karov, L'chol Asher Kruv Emet,
ושונא רב יעשה, ואת שיבתם ישמע ויושיע.
Shaber D'nai Kova, V'Krashayim Yashmid,
תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, ברכו בצר שם קודשו לעולם ועד.
V'anachnu Nivarech Yam Etav Olam, Hallelujah.
נברך יה, מה טוב עד עולם, הללויה.
We rise, page 153, Seder Haknasat, Sefer HaTorah, the service for turning the Torah scroll to the ark.
השיבנו אדוני לך ונשוב החדש ימינו כקדם. כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם תורתי, אל תעזובו עץ חיים היא, למה חזיקים בה בתומכיה, מאושר דרכיה, דרכי נועם, כל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Shabbat Shalom. You may be seated. Way back in the winter of 1994, my sister had been spending the year after she graduated high school studying in Israel, and my family and I had come to visit her, and we were touring the old city. This was post-Purim. So it was just a couple of days after that horrific incident, some of you may remember, where a man named Dr. Baruch Goldstein opened fire at a bunch of worshipers in the mosque in Hebron by the cave of Machpelah. So there were a lot of protests and there were a lot of riots erupting throughout Israel. Tensions were high. And in fact, the day before, the old city itself had been evacuated by the Jerusalem police and the IDF with tear gas because of rioting that was going on and protesting. So here it was just days later, and my family and I are walking through the old city. And of course, we get lost. We turn down a wrong corridor, go down an alley where we're not supposed to, and we find ourselves in the Muslim quarter. And all the signs, of course, in Arabic, and people are starting to stare at us. And I'm wearing my kippah. And my family is rightly getting very concerned and nervous. And my mom said, Michael, maybe you better take off your kippah. And I remember thinking, no, because I was wearing it all day. And this is just before I started seminary. And I thought, if I wore my kippah and I put on my kippah, I'm not going to now take it off out of fear. I felt like I would be sending a message if I did that. And I remember my father coming up to me and saying, look, Michael, I respect your decision as far as how you want to now identify yourself, but sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. And like I said, my family was rightly nervous, and it was a very tense moment and a tense time. And, again, I had the sort of outlook that only can come with a certain youthful exuberance matched with almost a bold naivete. And I think we eventually found our way out because my father stopped some Italian monks and asked them for directions in Italian, which thankfully he was fluent in. We found our way down another corridor and we found some chassids and he spoke to them in Yiddish, and eventually we found our way back to safety without any further incident. But I often think about that because I think about how we sometimes identify ourselves and the religious symbols that we use and that we choose. Obviously, if you're wearing a kippah, you're going to be recognized as Jewish, right? People can't just make the assumption about you, but they're going to know that that's who you are because that clearly stands, and it's a very clear identifying symbol, religiously, ritualistically, that you identify as a practicing Jew. There was an incident just last week where there were two Sikh teenagers who were walking around the Walt Whitman Mall, and they were accosted, and one of them was actually verbally, physically assaulted by another teenager who they were in a gang who attacked these kids and started making fun of them and disparaging comments and so forth, and the police, rightly so, marked it as a hate crime. Because Sikhs themselves, they're not Muslims, but they grow their hair long, and the men wear it wrapped up in a turban, and they grow beards, so they stand out, right? It's very easy to identify them, and perhaps if you don't know better, to also then make a wrong assumption about them and what they stand for and what they might represent. They're different, they can look like foreigners, but of course the religion of Sikhism is committed to peace and nonviolence. And Sikh teens who are beginning the practice of their religion and wearing the turbans should be able to walk around and not be targeted just because of their religious identification and how they observe. And I think about that in relation to this week's Parsha, because at the very close, in chapter 15 of Numbers, you have the mitzvah of tzitzit, of ritual fringes, right? It's also, we read it every morning and every evening. It's the third paragraph of the Shema, and it's very clear-cut. It's a mitzvah. It's a commandment. V'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfei v'gdehem l'dorotam. You shall wear fringes, ritual fringes, on the corners of all your garments, and attach a patil techelet, a cord of blue. And that's something going back to the Torah, to ancient times that our Israelite ancestors were meant to observe, and we're still meant to observe to this day. Of course, we fulfill the mitzvah each and every morning by doing what? By putting on a talit. But the talit isn't worn all day. talit is only worn for morning services. The one exception, of course, out of the entire day of the Jewish calendar year is Yom Kippur, when you wear it kol nidre as well as at night. But technically, any garment you wear that has corners is supposed to have attached to it. It's a mitzvah that is often ignored today, except amongst the observant Jews who wear an undergarment known as a talit katan, so they can fulfill the mitzvah each and every day. But any garment that you wear that has corners, in ancient times they often wore toga-like garments, was supposed to have the fringes attached to them. The idea being that if you see it, and you were supposed to see it, you're represented as a Jew, right? You're fulfilling the mitzvah. It's also physically something you're supposed to adhere to. And it's very clear if you see someone walking around in a talit or with their tzitzit showing, they're Jewish. They're observant Jews, and they're not trying to hide anything. And particularly in this week's Parsha, maybe you had that mitzvah associated with it because you have the entire story about the Israelite ancestors and how they didn't have confidence in themselves, right? They didn't have faith in themselves. They didn't think they were strong enough, they were mighty enough to conquer Canaan. They saw these people who to them looked like the equivalent of NBA stars. The cities were too far well fortified, the people were too equipped, and they automatically assumed the people must have seen them as, literally, as they say in the Hebrew, as grasshoppers comparatively. How did they know how the Canaanites would have viewed them, right? Maybe the Canaanites were just as concerned and scared of them as they were of the Canaanites. But the point being that they had such a low morale and that they were so clearly not unified in their belief and confidence in themselves that they automatically turned the entire Israelite camp, over 1 million people, into despair, to the point that they all want to turn back and go to Egypt, where they were enslaved. You could see that the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, had a long way to go from its ignominious inception. And the idea being, of course, that tzitzit, wearing this and being identified as part of a nation, as part of a tribe, as part of a people, what's the point of attaching these fringes, these ritual fringes, to your garments, to the corners of your garments? Well, the idea was lo taturu. You weren't supposed to be led astray. You were supposed to look at them and be reminded of your allegiance and your adherence to the Torah and to God and what you stood for and what you represented. Today, of course, you have that, when we were children, there was that custom of, they would say, tie a string around your finger so you don't forget something. I think today most people have alerts, right, on their smartphones. But this was supposed to show you that you stood for something, like wearing a uniform of your particular favorite team, right? You were part of something bigger. And as one Bible professor explained it to me when I was in seminary, it represented symbolically, spiritually, extension of who you were. You didn't end with your mere corpore being your physical entity. The tzitzit were a sign of majesty, a sign of royalty, that you stood for something. It was something that kings, princes, and noble people wore. It represented that there was more to you than just meets the eye. It didn't end at skin that closed and framed your full physical garments. Something more there. And of course, the cord of blue was a sign of royalty and majesty, something meant to magnify you in the ancient world. Like some people today identify purple as a sign of royalty. For the ancient Israelite nation in the Near East, it was this sky blue color. And I think about that because I think today, the fear that some of us might have in relation to what transpired recently with the war with Gaza, some of the incidents that we're hearing about, some of the attacks. And it's not just happening in the streets of Paris or London, when the protests aren't, of course, just flaring up in the Middle East. They're happening in places here in North America, places that are our home, in New York, in Boston, in LA, right? This is our adopted homeland. We've always felt safe here. We've always felt comfortable here. We've always felt secure here. We didn't have to hide our Judaism. We didn't have to check at the door. But maybe now some of us are starting to rethink that, right? Many of us heard about that incident that took place a few weeks ago where some diners were eating outside at a sushi restaurant in LA and a caravan of pro-Palestinian protesters pulled up and got out and started harassing the diners, asking, who here is a Jew? Who here is a Jew? We never thought that would happen here in our own country. I mean, yes, there's been anti-Semitic incidents and anti-Semitic attacks, but that we would be forced to identify ourselves as Jews or hide our Judaism because we didn't want to be verbally and possibly physically assaulted. Who thought that could happen here? I mean, after all, this isn't Germany in the late 1930s, and it shouldn't happen here. And the question I want to ask all of you, and the question I think about myself is, what would you do if you found yourself in that particular situation? If you were one of those diners, would you stand up proud and say, I'm Jewish, I have nothing to hide, I'm not scared, I'm not ashamed? It's a difficult question to ask. And I think back to that young man that I was in my early 20s back in 1994, and how I didn't want to check my Judaism at the door. I didn't want to have to hide anything. I didn't want to have to apologize for anything, obscure anything. But I also think about today, if I was with my own family, would I want to endanger them and put them in possibly a very compromised situation? And I don't know what I would do, I'll be honest with you, right? And in an ideal world, in an ideal situation, we wouldn't be forced to make that choice, right? We wouldn't be called out or questioned for our Judaism. We wouldn't be forced to defend it. We wouldn't be forced possibly to have to hide it in shame or fear, because that wouldn't happen in an ideal world, and it shouldn't happen in an ideal situation, and it shouldn't happen in our society today. But what I could say, what I can say, is as much as we have to be vigilant, and we can't put our heads in the sand, maybe we also need to stand unified. Because the truth is, if we stand tall and we stand proud and we stand in support of one another, then incidents like that we heard about are going to be much fewer and more far between. Because we send a message as Jews that we do stand together, that we're organized, and that we're not afraid. If you hear a lot about some of the attacks that happen in places like Paris, France, which has the largest Jewish community outside of North America and Israel, one of the reasons that there's so much anti-Semitism in Paris is because the Jewish community there isn't well organized. Thankfully, that's not the case here. But it also shows you that we can't be complacent. And we have to be careful. We can't compromise ourselves. We have to cooperate with one another. Because the more we stand together, the more we stand unified, the more we stand ready, the more we send the message that we are one people. Even if we are different political stripes or different levels of observance, we're still Jewish. And what you do to one of us, you do to all of us. What you say to one of us, you say to all of us. If we send that message, it becomes clear and it gets out there that you don't want to mess with us. You don't want to challenge us. You don't want to intimidate us, because we are united as over 6 million strong in this country. And that's why we have to be there together as Jews. It's not just a physical country and landscape that we have to think about setting into like our ancient ancestors did thousands of years ago. It's about the undiscovered country, what lies ahead, the future, what's in store for each and every one of us. And that's why we all have to be on the same page. Whatever our beliefs, whatever our practices, we're Jewish. We're not going to compromise that. We're not going to apologize for that. We're not going to check that at the door. And when that message is clear and gets out there, God willing, we should never have anything to fear. Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to ask you all to please rise, page 155, the Chatzi Kaddish.
Hannah, I want you here to help me a little bit. You want to stay with us? Okay.
Yigadal, v'yikadash shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
ve'alma divera kirutei, ve'amlich malchutei,
בחייכונו ויומכונו בחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה בה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו
Amen.
השמרה במבורך מעולם ולעול מעולמיה
Yitzhara, v'yitkabat, v'yitka'ar, v'yitraman, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yaleh, v'yalal, shemei dekurusha berechu, ve'ela mikol birchata, b'shirata,
תושבחת ונחמתה
Begin the Amidah together, page 156b for Musaf, the standing portion of the service. I'm going to be looking, I'm not turning my back towards you to be rude, but straight ahead at the Aron Kodesh, the Holy Ark, and eastward towards Jerusalem, as we always direct our thoughts and our prayers, our hearts and our minds.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו ולאברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא האל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור עולם אדוני מחיה מתים מטריו להושיע מוריד הטל מכלכל חיים מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר הוא מצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים נעריצך ונקדישך כסוציח שרפי קודש המקדישים שמך בקודש ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 כבודו מלא עולם משרתיו שואלים זה לזה איה מקום כבודו לעומתם ברוך יאמרו ממקומו יפם ברחמים ויחונם המייחדים שמו ערב הבוקר בכל יום תמיד פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים זה שמה שמה ישראל שמה ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו הוא מושיענו והוא repeat after me ישמיענו ברחמיו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית 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 לעיני כל חי להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם ודברי קודשך כתוב לאמור Now, three of you, I need you to sing Ledor Vador, okay?
אחד, שתיים, go.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד. לאט, אין.
לדור ודור, לדור ודור,
דור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. again, לדור ודור. דור ודור, דור ודור, לדור ודור, okay, last time, loud, 1 to go. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, גדול וקדוש אתה. כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We continue to daven silently in the Hebrew and English through page 161.
יעשה שלום היי. You know that? יעשה שלום היי. Okay. So another few more minutes, okay?
If you're still davening the Amidah, please don't interrupt. We conclude page 181, Kaddish Shalim.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. בואו מה דברה קירותינו וכותב חי חונם וכל מחד יחוב את ישראל בעגלה זמן קרי והימרו אמן. השמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברא ושתבע ויתפאר ויתרומה ויתנשא ויתרא ותלש מדי קודשה. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבי חטא ונחמתה דמירם בעלמא ואמרו. תתקבץ אותון ובותון כל ישראל קדום ובונדי שמע ואמרו. יש למה רבה מן שמע וחיים עליהם כל ישראל ואמרו. Let's we sing together, O עושה שלום. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו, כן בירדי, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, can I tell you, יעשה שלום, thanks God, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו, Amen.
And you may be seated in Kelohenu, led for us by the Bailey children.
You good? 1, 2, 3.
En Kelohenu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkenu,
en Kemoshienu, mi Kelohenu, mi Kadonenu, Mi kemalkeinu, mi kemoshienu. Noden leloheinu, noden ladonenu, noden lemalkeinu, noden moshienu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu.
Atahu shiktiru avotenu lefanecha ektoret hasamim.
And we rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol lategedu yotzer bereshit shelo asanu kegoye aratzo velo samanu kemishbechot hadaman shelo sam helkenu kahem vegor aleinu kechol hamonam venachnu korim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamalchim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim ve'oseh aretz u'moshe karov bashamayim mima'al u'shnei natuzo Ronim hu Eloheinu eino emet malkeinu evezulato kakadu v'torato ve'yadatayon ve'hashemota el levavecha ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim bashamayim mima'al ve'al haaretz mitachat eino
ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
נאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד
Mourner's Kaddish, page 184. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah, ve'almad yivrach eretzei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'me'ol maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah brechu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Just some quick announcements. First off, I want to thank Stephanie Fox, our new Exec VP, for being here on the Bema this morning. Give her a round of applause. She's a hockey mom, and she works full-time, which means she's very busy. So all the more so, we're very happy here. We're happy to have her serving as the new Exec VP for the next 2 years. We're all excited to work with her. So I also want to thank the Mashal family and all their friends and family who came both near and far, California, Florida, we heard, Roslyn Estates, East Hills, you name it. We're very happy to have you here this morning. Hanny did an amazing job. So Tyler, you're next. But again, really great job. I know we had to reschedule it a few times. I'm glad we finally got on the calendar before the summer. It was well worth it, well worth waiting for. As far as upcoming programs and announcements, next Thursday is the Thursday morning, the bar mitzvah of Ethan Goldberg, and next Saturday morning is the bar mitzvah of Corey Flyer. Services are the regular time over Zoom. It's 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, 8:30 the rest of the week, 6:15 in the evening. The only special announcement is that tomorrow evening, in addition to Zooming, we're also going to be meeting in person. We did have a special request from someone who has his mother's yahrzeit to meet in the chapel, the small chapel, so it's 6:15. If you'd like to come in person for services, you can, but we'll also Zoom the services. And next, not this week, but next Wednesday, Sue Lippy will be leading us over Zoom in a session of baking rugelach. She's actually going to show us her special recipe for s'mores rugelach, so please Zoom in for that. We unfortunately are going to have to cancel the artistry workshop on floral arrangement, but stay tuned for more announcements about what's coming in the months ahead, whether over Zoom or, God willing, as we're able to meet in person. And next, the Thursday of June 17th, we will be meeting for outdoors in the Clare Garden for Hearing Men's Voices, a chance for men to meet together at 7:30, talk about issues of fatherhood, husbandhood, and the like, and have some drinks. And the next Friday night, June 18th, we will be having services outdoors, not just Zooming them, but we'll be meeting in the Clare Garden for what's known as Sundown Shabbat as we kick off the summer. Some drinks, light refreshments will be served, some snacks. So like I said, just stay tuned for more announcements that are sure to come. And as we head into the summer hours, I'll be on vacation June 20th to June 30th, and the Cantor will be on vacation after that. So anyone who'd like to volunteer to either give a Devar Torah, a sermon, or to do Torah reading or Haftorah reading or lead parts of services, please let us know. And I think that concludes all the announcements for now. We'll do Adon Olam and then Kiddush and Hamotzi. So the Bailey children, again, if you want to lead us in Adon Olam, page 187, and you guys can pick the tune.
You ready? Adon Olam Asher Mala B'terem Kol Yitzir Nira Le'et Nasa Behefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'ha'are Kilo HaKol Levad Limloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yiyeh B'tif Ara V'hu Echad V'ein Sheni L'hamshilo L'habira B'li Rishi B'li Talchi V'lo Ha'oz V'yam Yisra V'hu Eli V'hai Goali V'tur Hevli B'et Sarah V'hu Nusi Umanos Li Benat Kosi B'yom Ikra B'yado Afkid Ruhi B'ishan V'a'ira V'imruhi Give Yadi Adonai V'lo Ira.
Please come in here, take a
I don't know if it's two. I'd do a different tune.
Please come in over. Hannah, come into this.
Oh, coming.